How to win your bracket pool 2025 edition. This is March Madness. I am Adam Zdroik. I'm going to go over a bunch of stuff here and let's see if we can get this in under 30 minutes. I'm going to go over some of my favorite metrics to look at for betting, for making my bracket, look at some percentages, historical favorites, going to look at who's picking who, the most popular teams, and then I'm going to dive a little bit into pool sizes, how to win your bracket pool depending on if there's 10, 20, 100, 1,000 people. I'm going to go into some little strategies, see what you can do to win those bracket pools, and going to look at an overall bracket of basically a bunch of favorites and then kind of tinker here and there. But before we get in, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to give a like on this video. Always very helpful. Also subscribe RotoWire to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball channel and all of the RotoWire content going on. We got a bunch of videos coming out on the YouTube page, RotoWire, youtube.com/@fantasybasketball. RotoWire Fantasy Basketball, that is. But also rotowire.com/cbasketball is where all of our college basketball content are at. If you're watching here on YouTube, which I assume you are, again, rotowire.com/try to get everything. There's some free stuff, but to get all of the tools, all of the stats, all of the previews, all of the injuries. We got an injury article that came out this morning. Obviously, you're going to want to know the injury situation of a lot of these players. News just came out, Tyrese Hunter. It doesn't look like the greatest news for him, a Memphis point guard. But there's also player rankings if you're in some kind of draft for March Madness. We got region previews, the team previews that you see over on Yahoo as well. Another article here, how to fill out your bracket. We're going to have betting stuff, DFS stuff, all kinds of stuff, rotowire.com/cbasketball. So check those things out. It's going to be constant over the next few weeks over on this channel. So check that out, rotowire.com/try. But I'm going to dive into some numbers here, just initial ideas of how you want to attack your bracket, more or less. So got up here on the screen. I pulled up over from Bart Torvik. I pulled up stats from February 8th. And what you could see here, you tend to look at, is this team good offensively, defensively, both, that kind of thing. Last season, we had teams, Illinois, your Kentuckys that were really good offensively, but pretty bad defensively. These stats are, again, some roughly about 10 games worth of stats is kind of what I like for, a small sample size. We can do the entire season, but at some point, the early season games, these teams are playing a lot differently. So I like just getting around the 10-game sample size. But these stats here, you can see the teams that stand out. Oddly enough, Missouri, number 5 in terms of adjusted offensive efficiency. Purdue, number 8 in terms of adjusted efficiency. Utah State is in there as well. Teams that have been really good offensively, and their defense is terrible. Those are teams that I like picking usually to go out early. If you can't defend in March, then you're not really going to go far. Illinois was one team. They were right around the cutoff last season in terms of where their defense was at. They're also on this graphic again. Their defense pretty bad outside the top 150 here. Purdue's defense outside of the top 190. Again, this is dating back to February 8th. So some interesting numbers here for those Big Ten teams. But again, it's not everything. A team like Alabama made a run to the Final Four. They find, some of these teams, they're athletic enough. They have the players. They have the right mentality that sometimes these numbers can be ignored, or sometimes the numbers don't matter, especially defensively. Alabama, their defense was better and their offense was awesome last season in the tournament. This season, we look at this, it's kind of similar. Their defense, number 41 on this, number 4 offensively. Of course, you want to check out RotoWire, see what the stats of Grant Nelson is before looking at a team like Alabama. But this one is offense, and this next slide here is going to be defense. So defense is what people say, defense wins championships. I think you have a better floor if you have an elite defense, but you have a higher ceiling with an elite offense. I guess that is kind of what the saying goes. But just looking at this list, you have a lot of these number 1 seeds. Duke here, 2 offensively, 11 defensively. Houston, 12 offensively, 1 defensively. So you have teams like this, obviously the best teams that have numbers like that. Auburn, wherever they are, their numbers have fallen off lately because they just haven't been as good. I mean, they're 9th and 29th in this. And then Florida is somewhere around here as well. Their defense also not as good. Number 1 offensively, 23rd defensively. But overall, obviously still pretty good. So these are just things you want to look at. Michigan's defense, 13 on here. Offense, 100. Are they going to have enough if they come up against a team like Auburn? How far is a team like that going to go if you're actually not very good offensively? Usually if you're even if you're pretty good defensively, the ceiling just isn't there if you're not as good offensively. So there's some numbers I usually like looking at. And one thing that a lot of people is going around, people are discussing is the numbers and how elite that these top end teams are. So this Duke team, incredible net rating here over at KenPom. Again, kenpom.com. Check it out. Same as Bart Tarek, use a lot of these stats if you want to dive in deep to the metrics. But everyone's saying, okay, best season ever for a conference with the SEC. These are 4 of the best teams ever in terms of a net rating entering the NCAA tournament. And that's true, but it's also the best season for a lot of these teams. I was comparing numbers just to last season, like this VCU team here, number 30 this season at KenPom, net rating here between offensive and defensive adjusted efficiency, 20.61. They would have been a top 16 team last season and a lot of seasons at KenPom. So this VCU team, who is 11 seed, would be top 16 at KenPom in other seasons. I think those are important notes when just looking, while there's maybe a plateau a little bit, there is an upper echelon of the top teams. Well, it's always a little bit always the case. I think you'll see here after like a certain level, there's a little bit of a fall off. If we look after, maybe let's just say, there's a big separation here, more than 1 point here between Arizona and Missouri. We go down to VCU, it's not a massive separation between the number 15 team and the number 30 team. What does that mean? Well, a lot of 3-6 matchups, maybe even a lot of what am I thinking here? 7-10, 3-6 would be the round of 32, 7-10 kind of games are a little more even than I think we usually get. And I think that's when you go in here, it's going to show up in the odds a little bit, but when we see the 3-6 matchup, I even though people are going to be glued to the number 3 teams, the number 3 seeds, the 6 seeds and 11 seeds, even in VCU's case, or even North Carolina isn't too far off. I know North Carolina has been a massive talking point because a lot of people don't think they should be in the tournament, but their metrics are pretty good, and they picked it up a lot late in the season. So what's the difference between a team like BYU making a run the Sweet 16 or North Carolina making a run the Sweet 16? According to the metrics, it's not much. These teams are pretty even, so it wouldn't be surprising if something like that happened. And then you're looking at teams like, okay, Kentucky is here. They're not much different from VCU either. So just things that I've been noticing here. And let's get into some historical stuff. So those are the numbers that I like to look at using Bart Torvik. Bart Torvik, you can customize a lot of stuff, customize dates, opponents, location, that kind of thing. Usually very helpful in terms of if you just want to analyze a team or multiple teams, kind of a thing. But let's get a little more into the bracket aspect here. And I was using team rankings. They have a lot of historical numbers in terms of building brackets and that kind of thing over at team rankings. And so looking at this screen right here, you can see Duke roughly, these are rough numbers that they're taken from number of sites. Currently, about 27% of people are picking Duke to win it all. Last season, I did the show last season, and it was like, I thought the number should have been 50% on UConn. It was kind of weird that UConn was only 30% picked as champion. It just felt like they're the best team, but that's for another time. This season, you could see Duke here at 27. If this Duke team was playing last season, and we'll remove UConn from the conversation because Duke has better metrics than last season's UConn team, Duke should be 40-50% if this was last season, but they're low here, 27%. So just a couple things. They're they're about mid-range in terms of historical favorites that the public are picking as a champion in the bracket. Last couple seasons, Alabama always with the up and down, iffy defense. They're below that 20% threshold, but Gonzaga up here, Duke up here 5 years ago. And looking more through the other teams this season, we have Duke, Florida, Auburn. Obviously, these are according to the odds. So, according to the odds, there's not much of a difference. I think there is more buzz going into Florida, but still the percentage isn't that high. You can see on this graphic here, the public's picking them about 22, 23% of the time to win the title. The odds suggest 18 to 19%. So, that's a little bit of a difference. And then Michigan State with the Tom Izzo aspect of it, and just Michigan State in general in March. They're also being picked by the public a little more. So just a couple of teams that, if you want to be different, as we get talking, I'm going to be talking. You want to get different in a lot of areas. So those are a couple areas you could look at, teams that maybe you pick out to go sooner than the Final Four, Elite Eight kind of a thing, and you can easily get different, especially in larger pools. And here are some numbers over at Yahoo to get some exact numbers here instead of, an amalgamation of a bunch of numbers. So Duke, these are Final Four percent numbers. 50% of people are picking Duke to the Final Four. It's a pretty big number, but overall, it's not incredible. A lot of that has to do with their region, which is incredibly favorable. Florida, 37%, Auburn, 24%, and Houston, 17%. That's a pretty low number for a 1 seed. And giving the numbers I was just looking at over at KenPom, we're looking here. I mean, this 35 number here, the top 4 teams through net rating is just all above 35. I'll just go to last season here in comparison. UConn obviously was a standout above the rest, but like that Zach Edey Purdue team, 30. Houston picked up a Jamal Shed injury in the tournament, 31. And now we just have 4 teams above 35. And one of those teams is barely being picked to reach the Final Four. I know Gonzaga is a trendy team because of the metrics. The metrics love them, but I'm not going to be there. I know this isn't you don't want my takes here, but if you look at the metrics in terms of Gonzaga, they beat Baylor by 40 in their opener. They have a lot of blowouts, which kind of inflate the metrics a little bit. So, but they also are 25-8 and picked up some bad losses in the WCC, which is why they're an 8 seed. They should be an 8 seed, and that's kind of where they're at. But the metrics suggest otherwise. But yeah, looking at these percentages, also the championship, this is only at Yahoo here. I'll pull up a Yahoo bracket as we get going. But Duke, this one's 30%. Florida, 19%, almost 20%. And then basically the amount of people picking Auburn or Houston is equal to the amount of picking Florida. And then there's another 30% of Duke. So I'm going to look at these numbers and look at size of bracket pools here between Duke and Florida. Last year, it was like UConn was a step above the rest. So I just looked at UConn, picking UConn as a champ. So this is, you're picking Duke or Florida as your national champion. It's going to be about 50% in your bracket. The 50% people, 50% of the public are picking Duke or Florida. But the numbers I just went over, obviously give or take, it's not exact science here, just in general here. So let's say it's a 20-person pool here, and even a 10-person pool, 7 to 10 people you're competing with. This is if you're picking Duke, Florida. So the general strategy for these 20-person pools, the 10-person pools, is I think if you actually want a decent chance to win, just pick all favorites. People love picking upsets, and in a 10-person pool, even a 20-person pool, the upsets will be wrong. Someone will pick a 12 seed, go into the Sweet 16, and that won't happen. If you just pick all the favorites in these small pools, and you don't care about putting any of your personal input into it, a lot of times you're going to come out on top. People love getting weird here and there. There's not a ton of people that are just like, here, I'm going to copy and paste, depending on what kind of bracket you're in. But there's not a ton of people that's like, okay, copy, paste, favorite. If you actually want to win a 10 to 20-person pool, I think your best strategy, honestly, is just picking all the favorites. Maybe an upset here or there, but I don't think you're going to be competing. If it is Duke or Florida as a champion, I don't think you're going to be competing with too many people as you get to a bigger uh, person pool. And again, RotoWire is running a pool for a subscription and a jersey. You can check out all that info over at RotoWire as well. It's also on all the X feeds, all the social media feeds. We have all the information if you want to sign up for that bracket pool. That bracket pool, that could be 100, 500, 1,000 people. And that's kind of what I'm getting to here. A little more into it instead of the smaller person pools here. So if you're picking Duke or Florida as your champion in a 100-person pool, you'll be competing with 40 to 50 people, roughly 40 to 50 other people to actually win. If you want to win this pool, 1,000 people, you up that number, 400 to 500 people. So the difference in these pools is I think that you can still win a 100-person pool with Duke or Florida. Because you're competing with fewer people. I think if you're up in that number, the more people you're competing with, that's when you start to change your champion. That's when you start to change things a little bit. And that's where I'm going to go to next. I'm going to pull up a bracket and just let's take a general look here of what things look at. So this is the people's popular picks bracket over at Yahoo. Just looking at pick distribution. But yeah, this is the popular picks bracket. Not a ton of upsets. You can see here, I'm scrolling through this. Actually, it's not up yet. We'll get there. There it is. So here we go. This is over at Yahoo. And so there's only a couple upsets really as we look through here. Michigan picked more times than Texas A&M here in this 4-5 matchup. It's going to be a lot of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's not really any upsets. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's another upset here. Clemson over Purdue. Maybe people realize that Purdue's defense is terrible, so that's kind of where they're looking. So let's say you're in a 100-person pool and you still want to pick Duke or Florida as your champion. And you can... So you're competing with this final prize. Let's just assume we want to win the whole thing here. We don't want our money back for 5th place. We don't want a few bucks for 4th place. Like let's win the whole thing. I don't care about getting 2nd place. Let's win it. Like we can do that. Okay, we can figure things out. Even though it's extremely lucky, extremely difficult. I'm not making this video because I'm making this video so we can win. So we can win some money. That's what the goal is here. So. You still want, say you're like Duke metrics, crazy, top 10 team. Cooper Flagg's fine. Don't got to worry about his injury. The route to the Final Four, the route to the final is favorable. So let's just do Duke. Let's get Duke as our champion. 100-person pool. Instead of doing Florida here, you're just doing a couple things. You do, let's say you just do Auburn over Florida. You do something like that. Maybe have Florida go out sooner. Maybe get St. John's in there over Florida. Pick Florida maybe to lose to Maryland. You don't have to go that far back, but you can do small things like that to where Duke is still your champion. Or on the other side of that, you could do Florida as your champion and have Duke go out in the Final Four. Duke go out and the Elite Eight, something like that. So those are some options there. Those are small options. You don't have to do too many different things. You're competing with, again, 100-person pool, 40 to 50 different people. So there's obviously a couple different things you're going to have to do as we look through the bracket. Maybe Auburn is one of those teams, the third favorite number 1 team. Maybe you get Auburn into the title game, and if you're thinking that Michigan State again is being picked more than the odds suggest, maybe take Michigan State to lose in the Sweet 16, round of 32. I don't know, something like that. And then if you're already glued into Duke, maybe do something else with Alabama. Maybe have BYU going around, VCU going around. So those are a couple minor things. That's not going to change your overall construction in the Final Four, but you're going to get different in the Elite Eight. You're going to get different. You're not going to have Alabama there. You're not going to have Michigan State there, or you're not going to have Florida in the Final Four. You're going to have something different. So those are a couple minor things that the basis of your Final Four is more or less still there, but you still got Duke there. You still got your team. And the opposite of that, if you want Florida, again, you can do something a little different. 1,000-person pool. This is where we start to get fun. This is where you need some wild things to happen. So if you want to pick Duke or Florida in 1,000-person pool, you're gonna need close to a perfect bracket. That's kind of what it comes down to. There's gonna be people out there that get a lot of things right, get a lot of weird things right, and it doesn't make sense. And you're gonna be like, how did this person project that? But it's 1,000-person pool. Most of the brackets are different, and at the end of the day, that's kind of what it's looking like. So a better way to win would be picking a different picking a different team to win the tournament in 1,000-person pool. So let me pull up those numbers again and like how we can get different. Here are the numbers again over at Yahoo. So Duke championship percentages. Duke is 30%, Florida 20%, Auburn 12%, Houston 9%. Rough numbers there. So 1,000-person pool again. So if you're picking Duke, that's 300 people. Florida, 200 people. Auburn, we're getting down to you're competing with about 100 people in 1,000-person pool. Florida, below 100 people. If we're getting to the number 2 seeds, that's kind of where it gets crazy. Maybe you're not worried about the Grant Nelson injury. 30, 40. So you're kind of taking it to, okay, I'm competing. Obviously, the team that you pick to win, you need them to win. There's no question about it. But it's just easier to win your bracket with one of these other teams than having to compete with 300, 400 other people if you have Duke or Florida to win. It is kind of what I'm saying here. No, it is what I'm saying, not kind of. So if you like Michigan State, St. John's, Tennessee, those are also ways to go. You're only going to be competing with 30, 40, 50 other people. And a lot of times when some weird things happen, there's weird brackets where people are just like, let me pick the number 4 seed to win the championship, and everything else is going to be wild about their bracket. So situations like that, you don't have to be completely crazy per se. So yeah, still talking about the 1,000-person bracket. If we want to pick someone other, and then I'll just go run through some ideas to be different based off of what I was talking about at the top of the show: offensive, defensive efficiency, that kind of thing. And I guess I already mentioned VCU at the top of the show. I know BYU is entering the tournament pretty well, but their defensive numbers, 73 in their past, 73 adjusted defensive efficiency in their last 11 games. So their defense is still a problem. And if you look at VCU, what I said at the top 16 team in last season, top 16 team at Ken Palm last season. And now they're an 11 seed here. I know if this was a different situation, I'd be a lot more on VCU playing Sunday, traveling to Denver for this game, BYU closer to home. But you got to be different here. 1,000-person pool. So that's one thing I'm looking at. VCU has the metrics. They're decent offensively and defensively, a really good defensive team. And their offense has actually picked it up lately as well. I know, okay, playing out of A10, it's a little different, but they have some guys. Max Shulga is awesome. So there's a way to be different. VCU, let's say VCU makes a run. You could still have Duke here. So VCU, Duke in the Elite Eight, and let's say Alabama, Grant Nelson is injured and he can't play in any of these games. Let's see that I'm talking Tuesday right now. Let's say that's what's happening for Alabama. One of their main players was extremely important in the run last season just because of what he can do at his position. So you remove him, and you got a Wisconsin team that is pretty inconsistent. Jacks a lot of threes, pretty inconsistent defensively. You have this run here for VCU and then you have this Alabama team. Maybe Alabama loses to St. Mary's. St. Mary's is going to try and slow that thing down. 2 years ago, San Diego State slowed that thing down against Alabama, beat number 1 seed Alabama. Can St. Mary's do that? I don't know, but it's in the realm of possibility. So there's a couple of things there in this side. You can still, so we're going to be different in a 1,000-person pool, but you could still have Duke in the Elite Eight. You could still have Duke in the Final Four, but it's like, okay, let's get VCU here. So there's one way we can get different a little bit. And looking at this, This Michigan UC San Diego is interesting because the public perception is kind of crazy on that. It used to be, whoa, you see San Diego, love them, going to be picking them in the first game. But you look at the percentages and it's still pretty heavy on Michigan to win this game. Um, this is a spot where I think you can either take. I'm not going to be taking Texas A&M to the Sweet 16. Their offense has been bad, but this is a spot where if you really like Michigan, depending on what you think about Auburn, you could take Michigan here to play Michigan State here in the Elite Eight. As a Michigan State guy, I don't know if I'm going to say that again, but there's an option. I think Ole Miss is basically forgotten as a forgotten team. Though I do think UNC is an option to go to the Sweet 16. Ole Miss basically hasn't been in any conversation because UNC is right here against San Diego State. UNC is getting all the buzz because they made the tournament. Iowa State getting all the buzz because they have injured players, Keyshawn Gilbert. And then you have Michigan State at the bottom of this. Ole Miss is getting no buzz. All the podcasts I've listened to, anything I've listened to, no one's talking about Ole Miss. No one is like, yo, Chris Beard, he went to the Final Four a few years ago and beat Michigan State in the Final Four. No one said that. I mean, I said it, but I haven't heard anyone else say that. Ole Miss, I'm not saying they're a good team, but you can easily get different there and take Chris Beard has Final Four experience. Again, this is a route I think that you can get crazy. This Michigan State offense isn't elite. We look at their defense, top 10 defense, but their offense over the past 10 or so games hasn't been in the top 50. So a team like that, you can find upsets here and there. Maybe they've been one of the worst three-point shooting teams all season, and anything can happen. They're clanking shots, and their defense is struggling against someone like Cam Jones or Donovan Dent, or Sean Padula is just chucking threes from 35 out, and they're all going in. That stuff can happen. That's kind of what I wanted to look at. The efficiencies, the numbers of all these teams, where you can pick upsets, and what teams you can feel a little better about. So that's an area right there. No one's talking about Ole Miss. There's another way you can get different, 1,000-person pool. Scroll down the bracket here a little bit. I can't pick Memphis without Tyrese Hunter. Dane Danger and PJ Haggerty are really nice players. Danger has been awesome in the last month plus, but without Hunter is just the guy, and I can't take them. If you want Maryland is an option here, is another option that I find it difficult personally. Is they have kind of similar metrics to Michigan State. They're just not a deep team, and their guards have really been iffy to close the season. Gillespie, Miguel. I find it difficult that they could beat Florida, but on any day here, Derek Queen could do something. Julian Race could do something. I'm not as huge on taking an upset over Florida because they're extremely deep. A lot of people are talking about Florida, and it's like, and it is very popular in terms of the public because of what they did in the SEC tournament, but no one's even mentioning their defensive metrics. They got back their number one center from a year ago who was injured, Micah Handlatten. I've been saying this all over. He's a 7'1" dude who had one of the best block percentages in the country last season. They got him back. I know it's only 10 to 15 minutes, but they don't have to worry about foul trouble. As long as these guys stay healthy, they battled the injuries all season. Another reason why the defensive metrics hasn't been great, but now they're healthy. I really like Florida. That's kind of what my stance on that is, getting a little further. So dropping down on the bottom of this, St. John's a similar team to Michigan State, probably worse offensive numbers. And I don't think they have someone like Chase Richardson exactly, but Rick Pitino. And how do you be different here? I think Texas Tech is pretty popular, so I'm not sure you can get too different. Could you go Kansas or Arkansas over St. John's? That wouldn't be the craziest thing. Could you do Missouri? No one's really talking about Missouri. I know they're a 6th seed, and I kind of bashed the 6 seeds a little earlier, and I probably will again on the next side here. But one of these teams here, why couldn't they make a run? Texas Tech has a couple of injuries. These guys aren't 100%. A couple of their starters, Darian Williams, Chance McMillan. Missouri doesn't play defense, which is my worry. Drake kind of struggles offensively, but Drake is just like a team that's going to make every game as ugly as possible. Why couldn't a team that makes a game as ugly as possible make the Sweet 16? Maybe they get there. Maybe Arkansas upsets St. John's. St. John's ran through games at Madison Square Garden. Or is it going to be the same? I think they're playing in Rhode Island. Maybe Providence for these games. They had a lot of close games in the Big East. And as we get to the Midwest region, a lot of people are going to Gonzaga. I think an easy way to get different is like Asa Newell, Blue Cane. Let's go, Georgia. Just do it. A lot of people are picking Gonzaga to advanced. Some are picking in the Final Four. Some are picking, over Houston. That's why Houston is the least popular of the 1 seeds. Gonzaga, their metrics are great, all that. I mentioned at the top, the metrics are overinflated because they blew out a bunch of mediocre teams, and they have that massive Baylor game that kind of set their season off. But they, against a lot of top teams, losses. Their metrics against top 100 teams aren't very great either. I know they closed the season a little better and figured some things out, but figuring things out against the WCC and comparing that to Houston isn't really the same thing. I like Houston could be a title contender. Just they're the 4th most popular 1 seed. It's one team that you could look at in terms of just getting different. And going down a little further here, I don't really want to pick either. A lot of people are picking Clemson because of what they did last season. I don't think they're as good as last season, and that's kind of the main thing here. They don't have Quentin Post. He's playing in the NBA right now, getting some minutes actually. But this isn't the same team as last year. I think they're kind of getting overrated a little bit. But on the other side of that, I already mentioned Purdue's defense isn't very good. I don't think either of these teams could beat Houston in this spot. And that's another reason I think why people are like Gonzaga, beat Houston, and then, another good matchup, win here. So I think you're still getting different a little bit to an extent with Houston right there. And to be really different here, Texas Xavier play Wednesday. I like Xavier. Xavier's numbers in the last 10 games, last 15 games, basically since Fremantle returned from his other injury. So he entered the season coming off, I think it was an ankle. He underwent surgery last season, missed the end of that season, missed most of the season. Then he went about a month, picked up another injury, and now he's been back for roughly 2 months. Zach Fremantle is Xavier's best player. I think they're going to beat Texas, and I think this is just a team that is solid enough offensively and defensively that could take down a team like Illinois. I know there's a lot of people in Illinois. It's been a talking point basically all season. Illinois fans are like, blah, 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 foul trouble, blah, blah, 3-point percentage, blah, blah, injuries. Half our team had the flu. Everyone's dealing with the flu. Everyone's sick. Everyone's dealing with injuries. Yes, they have a lot of NBA talent, but do any of these guys play defense? This defense is worse than it was last year. This offense is also worse than it was last year. So what are we getting at? I think Illinois is probably a little popular than they need to be, but Xavier is a team I would look at in a 1,000-person pool where you could definitely get different, where you got the 11 seeds sitting here in the Sweet 16 going against a Tennessee team that could be off and on, doesn't have the most consistent offense, or UCLA kind of a thing. Kentucky, a lot of their metrics have been without Lamont Butler. Their best defender, their point guard defender that they kind of need. But one team I've been looking at to make a run, but it is a little tough. Their overall numbers, they were pretty good early in the season, but the injuries have just been kind of derailed a lot of these numbers. And then the bottom there, Tennessee is a team that let me pull up the percentage again, how popular they are as a 2 seed. 7th most popular. Alabama, the least popular of the 2 seeds there. But those are kind of my ideas. Went a little long, went and kind of rambling a little bit with the 1,000-person pool, but hopefully everyone got the gist of all that. Again, rotowire.com/cbasketball. To get all of the content that RotoWire is going to have. Again, make sure to give a thumbs up on this video. Always very helpful for us. We also got a bunch of region previews throughout our YouTube channel. But thank you for listening to this. If you have any questions, you can find me at Zdroik or hit up the RotoWire CBB Twitter page as well. Again, thank you for listening. And you know what? As I said, good luck on your pools, and let's win a 1,000-person pool, and hopefully all of this advice that I just gave you is going to be 100%, and it's going to allow you to win millions and millions of dollars. Good luck.